Ariel's Twilight Years, how to be a really, really, really old model. I'm on my way to Eric Cain's house this month, and I've not worked with him for 9 months, and he's in my book. And he's in my book really because he's one of the people I wrote about, but he's in my book also because he deserves to be written about. So I did. I've not actually discussed it with him yet because I don't take consent. That seriously, it turns out. So I want to do a behind the scenes video to show what the process of working in the way that he does is like. I'm also going to try to document my sometimes inability to cope with the style of work he does, which is one of the reasons I chose to tell a story about working with him in my book, because most of the people I work with are working very much within the limits of what I can do, but he is really working beyond what I had done before I worked with him and beyond what I thought I would be able to do. I'm hoping I can share that with you. I'm also hoping I can remember the way because I've not got my sat nav on. I believe I am on the correct street. I once met an armadillo on this street. Part of the reason I'm talking to you is I'm quite nervous. It's not like BDSM is going to start as soon as I arrive or anything, but I've not seen him in ages and I love him. When I see people that I really care about, who are really good friends, but I don't get to see them very often, I always wonder, will we still be friends? It's been 9 months. I mean, we talk loads, but you never know. So, I'm a little nervous. I'm 2 weeks into a trip and I don't actually have any proper injuries yet, just a few bruises. Oh, Jesus. Okay, we're here. The road's got terrible. That's the sign. But the first thing we're going to do, really sadly, is go to a funeral of a friend. She's an amazing, inspirational woman in our lovely industry, and she passed away while I was over here. I'm very grateful to be able to go to her funeral. So I'm going to go now and say hello to Eric if I can find him, which is always a bit of a challenge, even in daylight. Hello friends, it is day 1 at Eric Cain's house / Eric Cain's shoot. We have driven to the funeral and driven back, and now Eric is getting ready to pull the car out of his studio, because when he's not shooting in his studio is his car workshop. So I believe I'm going to be helping him shortly by sitting in his car while he pushes it out. We have got, I think, 7 custom videos to shoot here, and they are all challenging to different degrees in different ways, and I don't think he's actually decided what we're going to start with, but I think it's quite likely to be an outdoor bondage thing, which I've never done, because whenever I've been here before it's always been in the season that's too hot to shoot. So now it's winter and it's really lovely outside. I am too warm because I'm wearing pyjamas, but if I was not wearing clothes I would be a beautiful temperature, so I'm delighted. We're going to try to do 2 different customs tomorrow, because if we can front load the trip a bit, as we get tired we won't be having to try to get loads done towards the end. But first of all, tomorrow we're going to go and see some giraffes at a giraffe ranch. We're going to go on camelback, and it turns out it's really not very far from Eric's house. So it's going to be a strange day of animal appreciation and BDSM. I don't think I've ever tried to do both those things in one day before, but I am determined and confident that it is possible. But before that, I'm going to take off my top. So I'm going to shut down my YouTube and start up my OnlyFans camera. It is day 2 of my visit, and it's the first day we'll actually be shooting, because yesterday we had to do all the other things. And I'm stretching, but we don't actually know which of the customs we're going to shoot yet, so I don't really know which bit of myself I need to stretch. So I'm just trying to stretch all of it. We've got some customs that have to be towards the end because they're going to definitely cause bruises. So anything with a lot of spanking has to come right at the end of the trip. Then there are some that are complicated by where we have to shoot them. So we'll probably leave them, because Eric's testing a new camera system, so we don't want to shoot anything that's asking a lot, technically, of the camera work first. So I think we might actually be shooting in here, which is a great gift because this is Eric's house that has air conditioning and the studio doesn't. And even though it is the winter here, it is still like very, very warm outside. So at the moment, I don't feel very nervous because I don't know what we're doing, which is quite nice. I feel less nervous than on previous trips. But I always do wonder with BDSM, what if today is the day I lose all my tolerance, I just don't have any ability to cope with it. And I think I'll be okay because I've been doing a lot of bondage on this trip and I've been perfectly fine. But it always feels great once we've shot one and no one's died. That's a great beginning. So I will update you later on in the day after the giraffes and camels. Thanks for listening, bye. It's about 3 o'clock and Eric is mostly set up. This is a new way of shooting. So we've got multiple cameras all on one tripod to make it faster for Eric to move the cameras, because once I'm in the position, we don't know yet how strenuous it will be, but because of the way he rigs generally, it does turn out pretty strenuous. So everything needs to be really perfectly set up before we start. And it's quite difficult because we are actually tying a position that neither of us have done before. So normally at least one of us will have done it, but this time it's a bit of a mystery. I'm scared because I remember every time, because I always go away for a long time and then I come back, and the first tie is always a shock. However much I've tried to prepare myself, it's always tighter than anyone else. I'm scared, and then this custom doesn't mention anything about nipple clamps, but Eric just mentioned them, and I hadn't expected that today, so I hadn't prepared by being scared enough for nipple clamps. I think that might be better. I think actually anticipating a lot is not very helpful. Emotionally, I feel like if I know exactly what's going to happen, I guess it's a sense of control, and and it's probably pretty stupid to be hoping for a sense of control when you are specifically doing submissive work, specifically with dominant sadist. So obviously I want to be here, but it's a very interesting thing that when the shoot is getting really close and I can see it all set up, I start to always just doubt if I can do it this time. And I never want to safe word out of anything. You know, I don't think anyone ever wants to. It's not a nice feeling because you always feel like you've sort of let the person you're playing with down. But when it's someone I really like and really respect, whose work I really respect, I especially don't want to, because it feels like an implied criticism. I'm not making this video because I think this is how you should be. I'm just talking about all the ways in which I do not cope ideally with this stuff. So thank you for listening. It is day 4 of the paradise. Lovely Eric, who is not going to appear in this video, I'm pretty sure, because the only time I have the calmness to record stuff is when he is busy. Because I sense he does not love being filmed, and living with a man who does not love being filmed, I understand this. Yesterday we shot our first customer, thank God. We didn't do it till quite late in the afternoon because of other stuff that was happening that day. And I was really scared, but it went really well. But it was the easiest rope bondage of the entire trip. I thought we had 7 to do. We in fact have 8 to do, so we've still got 7 to do. Today we've got 3 more days. We've got today, tomorrow and Monday. 7 customs. It's midday. We have not yet started because setup takes way longer than the actual shooting, which means Eric is super busy and I'm in this terrible waiting state. So I've already recorded an audiobook. I am proofreading my book, Playing to Lose, which is its final stage before it goes into actual being printed. So I've got stuff to be getting on with, but not enough to stop me getting nervous. Today we are shooting 2 out of 3 customs for 1 customer, and they are going to be very demanding for both of us. For Eric it's going to be very demanding because it's a tie in twine and a tie in zip ties, so a lot of that needs to go on to make it a sustainable rig, because the bondage is so thin you have to put a lot of it on, because otherwise it's just extremely painful and you can't stay in it. So it's going to be a lot for Eric, but it's also a lot of endurance for me, because the only way to make zip ties and twine look good on camera is to just do it really tight, otherwise it just slips off really. So it's going to be demanding on my joints. So I've been doing lots of stretching this morning. At the moment, the only soreness I've got is this shoulder. I think is bruised a bit, and I don't know from what. It was before Eric got bruise from lying on the carpet while I was tied up yesterday, because the carpet is very textured and it's weird. The stuff that marks you isn't always the stuff you'd expect with bondage. But other than that, I'm still feeling well. I'm scared it won't last. It's such a lot, because I don't get to do this sort of thing very often at all. So I can't kind of go, oh well, you know, it was fine last week. There was no last week. There is no one else doing this stuff with me. So I know how to prepare for and cope with pain from spanking and caning, because I do a lot more of that. But I don't get to be tied like this very often at all. So all I can say to myself is that last May I was capable of doing it, but that's a long time ago. So I'm talking to you because I feel like that will help. Now I'm going to go, because I feel like if I stop and I'm ready to shoot, the shooting will start. This is not how it works. I know this because I've been working with Eric for 6 or 7 years, and it never works like that. But nevertheless, but there's bamboo in his backyard. Isn't that amazing? I feel like people might be suspicious that Eric is just my imaginary friend who I pretend to do this really great bondage with, because you're not going to see him in this movie. It's day 3 of shooting with Eric, and I'm doing a very strange thing. I am stretching before our first bondage custom of the day. And when you stretch specifically for bondage, it's not like normal stretching. So my first position I'm going to be tied in is I'm standing on my left leg in high heels with my right leg up above my head. So normally, of course, you would stretch symmetrically, but today I'm just stretching so that my right leg can go up. And this side of my back will be able to cope, hopefully, with that position. And at the same time, my arms are going to be tied like this, which is called a reverse prayer. And fortunately for me, this is not a hard position for me generally. But nevertheless, because everything Eric does is on the extreme side, I'm just stretching here to make sure that I give myself the best chance of it not hurting too much. So I always think if I can find maybe 5% or maybe just even 2%, maybe even 1% more movement than the tie is going to require of me, I sort of feel kind of safer that I'm going to be able to cope with it. The other bondage model stretch, which is really important, is this one, which is the elbows together tie, which we're going to be doing, I think, for the first time tomorrow, which I do find a little harder. I tend to get numb faster from that one, and it's a little harder to stretch for, but I do manage to stretch sometimes for it by doing this, which helps a little. So that's what I'm doing. Yesterday we did really well. We got our 2 quite difficult rope bondage customs done. They were difficult for me because they were physically challenging, so it was a lot to endure, but they were very difficult for Eric. The zip tie, hog tie, which again is technically quite challenging to tie, specifically because he had to do this arm position, which is hard to rig when you're using something like zip ties that have a sharp edge. So we were very tired by the end of yesterday, and now we're beginning to kind of seesaw between the hardest bondage stuff that we have shot at the beginning of the week and then the hardest BDSM stuff, which we tend to shoot at the end, so because it leaves bruises. So even the toughest rope bondage positions don't tend to leave much on me in the way of marks the next day, but the spanking type stuff does. So we have to schedule stuff quite carefully just to make sure that we don't prematurely mark me or just get my body so worn out, or Eric's body, to be honest, because he's doing a lot of lifting. that we can't do the rest of the week. So it is certainly challenging, but it's very lovely. It's nice to be back and to remember why I like doing it with Eric. And the reason is I just feel like no one's 100% safe. Nothing is 100% safe with bondage, but I just feel like he puts considerable effort and skill into trying to make it safe. And I really appreciate that. So I will update you. Thanks for listening. Bye. Hello friends, it's the last day of my custom trip with Eric and something unexpected happened and I think it's totally worth talking about. Yesterday we'd already shot 2 customs and we went to shoot the 3rd and we hadn't got much time until we lost the light because it was the end of the day and it was an outdoor shoot. We'd already shot a tough reverse prayer position earlier in the day and I'd got quite a lot of pain as we shot it and I wasn't 100% back to feeling normal afterwards. So the rig was meant to involve my hands being taped into fists and then tying another reverse prayer, so it would have been like this. And pretty much as soon as Eric wrapped my left hand, the pain that I'd experienced earlier on in the shoot came back. So I thought maybe it would be okay. Sometimes something can hurt for a little while and then your body relaxes into it with bondage. So he continued to tie the rig and then I realised the pain was getting too much for me. So I said to him, I'm actually getting a lot of pain. I think the tape is going to need to come off. And I've been doing this 20 years, but it's a remarkably hard thing to do. So I wanted to talk about it because, you know, I'm friends with Eric, I've known him a long time, but it's still really difficult to feel like you might disappoint someone you're working with. He was lovely and immediately untied me and said, I don't think we're going to try to shoot this today. We've not got enough time, we're under too much pressure. So we've just come back to it this morning and we've shot it and we succeeded. We changed it a little bit with the permission of the lovely customer. So my hands were taped like this instead of like this and it made all the difference. It was still painful, it was still tight, but it was achievable. So I'm leaving, well, we've got one more video to make on this trip and then I'm leaving. So I'm likely to get through the whole thing without injuries, which is obviously really important, but not necessarily easy to do when you're shooting a whole week of tough bondage. So I just thought it was worth mentioning because it was hard for me to do the right thing, which was to say something's wrong. And I imagine it was hard for Eric to throw away all the work he'd done up to that point of setting up all the cameras outside, halfway through tying me. I don't imagine what he wanted to hear was me saying, I can't do it. But it was the right thing for him to let me out. You know, he shouldn't have tried to persuade me to carry on, and he didn't. So I think we did both do the right thing. But even for people with like 35 years of bondage experience between us, it wasn't easy to do that. So I encourage you, if you shoot anything, but especially bondage as a model or a photographer, to be aware that stopping is sometimes the right thing to do. And then we shot this morning and it worked great. So we've only got one more video to do and I'm really looking forward to it, but first we're going to have lunch. Bye! Hello friends, I am at Dublin Airport on my way back from my trip to shoot with Eric. The last shoot, the last day, was quite fraught because we were running out of time. We didn't actually get all our customs shot, but that is the right thing to do. I know it's the responsible thing to do as a rigger or producer. If you're feeling too rushed, the money should not be so important that you carry on shooting when you're not really safe to do so. So I guess I was hoping to make this video about everything going really smoothly, but actually in some ways I guess it's more valuable to make this video when things didn't all go 100% smoothly at all. So we shot our outdoor video that we'd failed to do the day before, but then we had to shoot one more, and it was a combination of stuff that we'd not shot together before, and it turned out actually some of the things we did were things that neither of us had done before. So it was a great step into the unknown. We tried to do 2 rope bondage positions we could transition between, and unfortunately the point at which we got to the transition, it fell apart. So we got the first part of the video the way we planned it, but the part that I'd really wanted to get to, we didn't make it to it. And Eric decided we should stop the video there rather than persevering with something that might not work. So it's kind of been a useful reminder that even with one of the best riggers and producers I work with, and even with 20 years of experience as a bondage model, when you're working towards the limits of what you can do, sometimes it doesn't work. I felt dreadful about it. Whenever I think that I've sort of failed the project, either physically or psychologically, it's really rough. Quite early on working with Eric, I safe-worded, and I remember I felt awful. Unfortunately, now I've got a little more experience of doing the tougher stuff. I know Eric better, so I don't think he's going to stop being my friend over it. And I know that really when you shoot BDSM this type, you're sort of looking for the failure point. You're looking for the point at which you can't cope anymore, you can't take anymore. And that means sometimes things finish abruptly. And so it's nice for me to see evidence of progress in how I deal with not being able to go beyond a certain point. So it's been a really productive trip from that point of view, because I feel like I am still learning how to do the more ambitious bondage stuff, because most of my career has been spent doing glamour bondage, which is a little less physically stressful. I'm not injured, I'm not very bruised, and my hands have come completely back to life. I'm sort of sore, like I've worked out, but I don't feel like I've got any damage at all. And I'm really looking forward to everyone seeing the work. And I'm also really looking forward to the book coming out. The chapter when I'm talking about doing this work, which this video was meant to be a kind of supporting act for that chapter in the book, because I'm hoping to find ways to showcase various people who are going to be in the book through YouTube videos over the next few months while we wait for the book to be published. It's now coming out for sure in August, but I don't have the actual specific date yet. So please stay tuned, whatever that means. Come back to my YouTube channel where hopefully some of the people in my book will actually physically appear. In the end, I could not be cruel enough to make Eric be in my video because he was already under so much pressure. I cannot also stay in his house and point a camera at him when he's already hosting me and shooting all this stuff. Now I'm going to catch a final flight home, and I am hoping I won't give Howell COVID this time. I just tested negative, but honestly everyone on the flight seemed to be coughing. I was surrounded by children all coughing. Anyway, please like, subscribe, but most of all, please pre-order my book. And don't notice, what is this? Static electricity, that's what this is. Thanks for listening, bye.